Welcome to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and I'm continuing my J.G. Ballard series with his 35th published work, according to my bibliography, A Question of Reentry, which is a novelette published in the March 1963 of Fantastic Stories of Imagination magazine. I have that issue right here. This is the actual issue. And of course, I read it in Complete Stories of J.G. Ballard, my favorite book right now. I also do have this story in the hardcover Arkham House collection of Ballard called Memories of the Space Age, and in the paperback edition of The Terminal Beach, published by Carolyn Graff in 1987. So there's a lot of different places where this story has been printed and reprinted. And the story, I feel, relates a lot to The Wind from Nowhere and The Drowned World. It has a similar interest in looking at our world and how it could be changed, how it could be affected by technology. It has a similar interest in looking at specifically cases where technology fails us and our world reverts backward. In The Drowned World, we were reverting back to the Jurassic period with, because everything was becoming flooded and becoming very jungle-like and swampland. Question of Reentry is really, it can be called science fiction, but it's not very science fictional. It could actually have happened. There's nothing in it that stretches the imagination at all. Nothing in it that requires any new science to be discovered. Because in the story, you have a space capsule that comes back from a moon mission. It's not called Apollo, it's called something else, but it's just like one of the Apollo space capsules that took astronauts to the moon. Comes back to Earth. On re-entry, the path is a little different from what was planned, and the capsule does not crash into the ocean. Instead, it crashes into the jungles of the Amazon. So a United Nations search team goes down into the Amazon jungles, goes up the river searching for the capsule, and they find a man who is there living with the jungle natives. And in talking to him, he won't lead the search team to the capsule, but he knows of it. And the search team does find evidence. Okay, so we're looking at another story that has a lot of parallels with Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, just like The Drowned World did, but it's a very different story from The Drowned World. It's not at all like The Drowned World, yet it still has affinities to Conrad's Heart of Darkness, which makes it interesting. I find this to be a pretty good story, but once again, it's a slow burn story. There's not a lot. There's movement to the plot in this, more so than I found in The Drowned World, but otherwise not a whole lot of changes of events, changes in the story. It's very slow. It's a slow burn. It develops slowly, and you do get to the point, and you do have a plot, and you do have things happening. It's just nothing, no major events really until the ending. It's an excellent story. It's very well written, and this is where I'm going to start spoiling it a little bit. Okay, so if you've never read it and want to read it, you should stop now, go and read it, and come back afterward. Okay, so here comes the spoilers. What they find out is these natives, they have a belief that they should eat their gods. Okay, so any people they come across which they regard as a god, as higher than them, they go cannibalistic on them and just cook them up and eat them. So that's exactly what happened to the astronaut in the capsule. The search team does find evidence that the capsule did land somewhere there. It has been buried, so they can't find it. But they do find something that tells them the capsule is definitely there. And then they're talking to the guy that's hanging around with these natives, and he tells them the natives are not really cannibals per se. They don't eat anybody. They only eat their gods. And because this guy fell from the sky, they regarded him as a god and ate him. There's a movie called The Gods Must Be Crazy, where somebody throws a Coke can or a Coke bottle out of an airplane over a remote island, and the natives on the islands start worshiping it. Kind of like that, except not a comedy, a very serious story, and a very good story with Ballard's usual excellent writing. And it seems like we've got three of these slow burn stories from Ballard now, where he doesn't have what you would call action going on, and so the story develops, but it's a quiet development, a slow development, and one that, in the case of the Drowned World, got rather frustrating, because for a long time nothing was really happening, and you weren't getting any really new information either. This story, you do continually get new information about what's going on, but nothing major. Everything develops very slowly and kind of quietly. And it seems to be a new style that Ballard is doing, and we got three of these now. This one, in my opinion, is the best of the three. And so I think it shows improvement in this new style that Ballard experimented with. And he's getting stronger with it and doing much, much better stories. So I think we got some great things to come from Ballard. I have to admit, there's very little by Ballard after 1962 that I've read. Very few of his works after 1962. So this stylistic development is not really familiar to me. This is a new thing to me, and it's interesting, and that's why I'm doing these deep dive videos following in publication order, because it is revealing this kind of development going on with a writer like Ballard. As you when you're still reading early works, like with Ray Bradbury, I'm still in his fanzine stuff. You don't see much development as a writer, but after you've done a few, like this is now number 35 by Ballard, and we've covered like 10 years of writing, and we're seeing, and he did develop into a really excellent writer, but he was still doing more traditional kinds of narratives. Now he's experimenting, and he's moving forward, branching out, growing in his style into something new. And it's really interesting to see this. So I can't wait for what is to come, and what is to come after Question of Reentry comes The Reptile Enclosure. And by the way, as much as I like A Question of Reentry, I don't think it's quite there for a top tale. Didn't quite blow me away. So the next story is The Reptile Enclosure. Published the same month, actually. He published 3 stories in March of 1963. The Subliminal, A Question of Reentry, The Reptile Enclosure, and The Time Tombs. So I hope you'll if you've read a question for re-entry, leave your comments in the comment section of the video. I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, like button, subscribe button, and come on back for a lot more Ballard and other authors and topics and stories that we do here on Telltale